Good morning. It's April 12th, 2022. It's Tuesday, and welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. It looks like it's bloody winter out there again. Uh, minus 10 or 11 and snowing in Calgary. Of course, it sounds like they're getting it a heck of a lot worse out in Manitoba and Saskatchewan out that way. So, hey, thoughts and prayers with you guys. Hopefully, it's the last blast of winter for us to deal with. I've been in Canada my whole life, and I've never learned to like winter. I loved skiing and everything when I was young, and I do like the lack of bugs, I guess. But aside from that, winter is just a pain in the ass. So this is our live show. It's going to be coming to you guys every day at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Monday to Friday, except for this Friday. It's Good Friday. We don't do the holidays. But we're going to be covering a whole lot of stuff going on. Just that reminder, in case I forget to mention it later, though, on Friday, I'm going to be going to the firearms show. There's a big one, an annual one that happens in Calgary. It's going to be over on the Sutina Reserve at their arena. I'm not sure the exact details on that. I'll let people know before then. But if you're interested in firearms, that's the place to go. And James and I will be out there as well, representing the Western Standard, as well a lot of course, vendors and other people. So comments, I see a bunch coming in already. Scott, Ashley, Jackie, all good to see you guys. And as I like to remind everybody on the show, they're welcome. I like that interactivity, showing that I've got live people on the other side. I'm not just talking to the air like I am at home when Jane just tunes out and I'm ranting at her. It's good to know you're there. Just make sure to keep it civil. You can throw questions towards my guests, towards me, and I can read some of them sometimes, and other times discuss things with each other. I like seeing that activity. I mean, we've come up with things. I've had people give guest suggestions on here I never would have thought of, or questions I never would have considered, and it really helps make the show work. Recorded shows, hey, they're great. They've got their place, but they just don't quite have that flow of these live ones. Of course, we get those hiccups and technical issues now and then with it being live, but I think it's well worth it. And it's good to see you all out there. I see Debbie from Nova Scotia. We're going to talk a little bit of East Coast stuff in a way, and Kathy and Anthony. So we should get on, though. Enough of my positivity and fluffy things, and get on to what I'm triggered by today and what I'm ranting about. So, if nothing else, China can be counted on to offer the world an example of how not to treat citizens. From Mao Zedong's collectivization of farms leading to the mass starvation and then later on to the massacre of protesters in response to Tiananmen Square protests, to today's incarceration of millions with a COVID-0 policy, China never hesitates to step on individual rights in misguided efforts to ostensibly protect the majority. Remember, it's always for your own good. Well, right now, 25 million citizens in Shanghai have been locked in their homes for weeks in response to what's actually a relatively low number of COVID-19 cases being reported. Now, while COVID isn't harming the Chinese much in a relative way, the lockdowns, of course, are causing massive unrest. People are running out of food. We're seeing incidents of the slaughter of people's house pets by government officials. There was a dog beaten to death out in the streets. This is what they're down to. China is in a state of panic. And it isn't due to the virus. It's due to the failure of the state. You see, China has embraced the state as a religion. And as with any religion, adherents see their holy leadership as being infallible. It can't be wrong. The state can do no wrong, and only impure individuals can. With that sort of faith, it becomes inconceivable to people that the state can't control a simple virus. They believe the only reason that COVID-19 is still spreading, despite government opposing such a spread, is that people aren't sticking to state-enforced mandates closely enough. The answer for people who follow this faith, of course, is for the state to crack down even harder, lock up people further. If only the state could exert itself hard enough, this virus would go away forever. We have many adherents to the same cult in Canada. It's just a matter of degree. So despite years of effort and lockdowns of varying intrusiveness, not a single nation on earth has eradicated COVID-19. While vaccines may reduce negative outcomes, they clearly have a negligible impact upon the spread of the virus at best. Vaccine mandates had little effect on the spread of COVID, but they destroyed lives, careers, and relationships around the world. We're now well into our third year of the pandemic. We know what doesn't work yet, but many are still doggedly, they want to keep trying to legislate our way out of this pandemic. We still see mainstream media reporting on every fearful statistic they can find with hushed tones. If deaths go down, they'll report on the infections. If the infections go down, they'll report on wastewater studies. If hospitalizations are down, they'll give 5 minutes of airtime to some hypochondriac speaking on their ailments due to what they feel might be a case of long COVID. Next, the media, of course, will always turn to some expert or another who's going to insist we need lockdowns. They'll say if we just close schools long enough, shut down businesses hard enough, locked up the unmasked effectively enough and pushed vaccination hard enough, the pandemic will finally end. This cycle is becoming predictable and tiresome. Aren't the COVID zero cultists getting tired of being wrong yet? It appears not. What we've learned over the last couple of years is that while COVID-19 is far from harmless, it isn't nearly as dangerous as doomsayers warned us of. Healthy young people rarely have negative outcomes after infection, particularly if they've been vaccinated. We need to end this insane push to lock down and restrict people who are at low risk of harm and work to mitigate the harm to the vulnerable. This advice was offered by countless medical experts in the Great Barrington Declaration long ago, and it was ignored. Signatories of that document were dismissed, and the state insisted they could get this virus under control through legislation. The state and its faithful were and remain dead wrong. Our government can't even manage their own bloody payroll system. How can people believe that they can somehow manage a virus? Yet many believe it. As I said, China is providing us all with the most stark of examples. Even in an authoritarian dictatorship, the kind that Justin Trudeau admires, where tens of millions of people can be locked down on a whim, they can't control this virus. Ironically, they might actually be making the virus more dangerous as they slow the inevitable progression of natural immunity through infection. They aren't stopping the virus, but they might be delaying it long enough to allow it to evolve into a potentially more deadly variant. Let's learn from this. We have to learn to live with COVID-19. It's going to have its ups and downs. It's going to kill some people. It's going to leave some people with lingering after effects. This is all unfortunate, but there's little sense demanding the state do something about it when there's nothing effective the state can do. COVID zero is a myth, an unreasonable goal, and only a person in extreme denial of reality can pursue that goal. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of people living in that world of delusion, and many of them influence our public policy. We called out and villainized those who chose not to be vaccinated. We sat by and watched our prime minister, among others, label people who protested against mandates as being racists and Nazis. We let the state divide us all so they could pursue a vain effort to stop a virus that they have no control over. Now we need to change the tide. Now we need to call out the COVID zero cultists. Make them feel uncomfortable, speak up. Drown out their fearful, ridiculous, and dangerous cries for more state intervention into our lives. A person demanding more government intervention should be dismissed, and their stance should be labeled as being extreme, because it is. How can we comfortably accept a call for the government to stomp on individual rights as being reasonable? We should never let ourselves accept that sort of call as being rational. Don't let the COVID zero cultists and their fears trump your rights any longer. We've seen what happens if they're allowed to go unchecked, and it's happening right now in China. Okay, so that's what's got me going today, guys. Hopefully they let the poor people of China free and stop beating their pets to death soon. Let's check in with our news editor, Dave Naylor, over way on the other end of the Western Standard headquarters. How's it going, Dave?
It's going well, Cory. Hey, that was an interesting story yesterday about Councillor Cory involved in some sort of road rage incident. I know that brought a smile to your face.
It did. It looks very good on him. He's an angry little man.
Yeah, and ironically, he was the councillor that was pushing most for Sean Chu to have to resign, and Sean Chu wasn't charged with anything, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to Councillor Kara here. He's already he's resigned from the police commission, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Also interesting, very good news this morning, Cory. Danielle Smith, former leader of the Wild Rose, former talk show host on QR77, is bringing her brand of radio talk to the Western Standard. She's going to be hosting 3 shows a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then on Saturday, she'll have a special longer show. So that's really good news for us. She's going to be, ironically, on Saturday going head-to-head with the Premier on his talk show on QR. So very interested to see who gets what in the world of ratings. Other stuff that's on the site at the moment, Cory, Myke Thomas, who's one of your guests later on today, has a story on bidding wars across the country on houses for sale. There was one in Ottawa last week that went for $800,000 over the asking price, if you can believe that or not. It's just crazy out there. Other stuff, we've got the Canada Research Chair says the Liberal bill to try and control Facebook and Google with the media is just absurd and one of the worst things he's ever seen. Our Linda Slobodian and Chris Oldcorn are preparing for a massive blizzard coming into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Poor Linda's going to have to shovel somewhere up to 80 centimeters of snow. So that is just a ton of snow. We've got a story on interpreters who worked with Canada in Kabul, pleading for help, pleading for Canada to do anything to try and get him out of the country. This is into the parliamentary inquiry into why our ambassador, Reid Sears, fled the country on a half-empty plane when there was all these people just, clamoring to get out. And we've got Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe talking about, he came across earlier this week that he didn't care about climate change. Well, that's not exactly what he meant, and we've got a story clarifying those remarks. Coming up later today, Cory, I know you've got a column from Kerry Diot, former Edmonton MP. He's talking about the UCP leadership race and big political doings in Calgary tonight. Pierre Poilievre should be hosting a massive crowd down at Spruce Meadows. So the Western Standard will be there with a full team to cover that, Cory. So busy day ahead.
Yes, I'm going to be among those down there at tonight's Pierre Poilievre event, and we'll see how that goes. He's sure been grabbing a lot of attention across the country with those rallies. For a leadership race, an internal race, you don't usually see quite such, excitement building, or we haven't in quite a while anyways.
Yeah, I think Rex Murphy kind of hit the nail on the head, because the reason he's got so much charisma is that he just has no charisma. And Canadians are looking for ideas. They're not just looking for, sunshine ways and nicely coiffed hair. They want good ideas. So he's sure packing them in wherever he goes.
Great. Well, I'll be looking forward to that and more of the stories as they come. Thanks for checking in today, Dave, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Cory.
Okay, guys. So yes, lots of news on the go, lots breaking. I've heard some other stuff. We've got some investigations going on. There'll be more news stories popping up of good interest that I can't quite leak right now. But if you haven't, this is where I've got a plug. This is why we can do this. This is how we have these reporters across the country. It's because of you guys subscribing, and I really appreciate those guys who have subscribed already, and gals, all of you. I don't really worry about gender. If you haven't taken out a subscription yet, though, please do. This is how we can do this. This is how we pay for this studio, how we pay for Nico to put up with me for an hour and a half a day as a producer, and how we can keep getting those reporters across the country. We don't take any tax dollars. We qualify for them. We won't take them. It's you guys who tell us how to operate, what we're doing, and how we're doing. And we've been doing great. I'll pat myself on the back because we've had loads of subscribers, and that's how we've been able to expand. But of course, we still need more because we still need to replace that rotten mainstream media that's out there. So take out a subscription. $10 a month, guys, gets you full access to everything. Use the coupon code TRIGGERED. You'll get $10 off. Hey, everybody needs to save a few bucks these days, especially with the price of gas. And if it's 90, you take out a whole year, it's $99, way under $10 a month. To get full access for this. I know some people pay more than that to play World of Warcraft, and I assure you, you will get more educational content out of what we offer here rather than what you'll get from online gaming. So again, thanks to all of you who have already subscribed, and if you haven't already, please get out there, take out a subscription, buy one on somebody else's behalf, or nag your boss. We have some corporate subscribers. They'll buy a whole block of subscriptions and give access to their employees, so their employees get unfettered news and opinion access here with the Western Standard. So that's something coming up. We've got Danielle Smith, who's going to start with us. She's going to be on for a while, and Derek wrote a long story breaking down how all that works and where he's sitting with it. Derek talked about it in his column as well. He was, and I was among them. I did some media back then too. When Danielle did cross the floor, we were furious. We were upset. It took us all kind of years before we even started talking to each other again. And eventually, once Danielle got on radio, she was fantastic. She did really well on QR77. And the editorial pressures and the cancel crowd and the rest of them eventually pushed her away. And she was effective on talk radio. She was engaging to listen to, and she talked about issues that the mainstream media didn't want to talk about. And that's why eventually they had to part ways. So she's going to be here. She'll be on Unrestrained. That schedule is going to be in the mornings, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Pretty sure it's going to be at 9 a.m. on those 3 mornings, and it's just going to be a half-hour thing. So she'll give 3 kind of half-hour live daily shots. And then on Saturday, it's an extended show. She'll have a guest, and she'll go for an hour and a half. So 4 days a week. And you can warm up your morning hearing from Danielle, seeing what she's on about. And of course, take your break, have some coffee, breakfast, and then come back and join my show afterwards. But I think it's going to be a great addition to the Standard. Some people are still upset with some of the things she's done in the past. Well, she's never hidden from what her political history was. I'm certain she'll probably answer questions about that on her show as she gets it rolling. But it's going to be great. And she's got political aspirations. We understand, too, that if an election's called, things like that, and she's running, well, then that'll be the end of her time here at the Standard, because, of course, it's just too difficult to try and maintain impartiality whilst in the middle of an election or something like that. But it's going to be a great addition. As Philip saying, is Danielle no longer going to be talking about the UCP leadership? I don't know exactly what Danielle's going to talk about. That's going to be her show. As Claudette's saying, and others, though, they know that she does a good job and did a good job in the past. Somebody saying, Andrea saying we should do a call-in show. And we're working towards that with some of our tech. There's actually a podcasting streaming software that allows that sort of thing to make it almost like a live call-in radio show. And we might evolve to that. We've really, for those who've been watching this for a while, know that we've been growing and evolving, and we got new gear and stuff going on in here all the time. And that's one of the other areas we're going to evolve to. I'm not sure exactly when. For now, it's just text comments, but we still have that interactivity happening, and it's a great addition, and that's why I like getting those out from other folks. Tammy saying about Danielle, she's done what few have, is taking responsibility, and and I think there's some truth to that. Again, Danielle's never denied that she made a mistake. I think she's these days been the first person. She spent more time dwelling on what that decision was back then than anybody else has. Again, whether that'll work out well for her with her political aspirations in the future or whatnot, I don't know. That's up to you guys as voters and party members, and in the future as things break down. But again, I'm really looking forward to seeing her here at the Standard. So before we get to our next guest, I'll look into some of those other things. I had to laugh when we saw that come across the news yesterday, though, on break, and with Giancarlo Carra. For people, we got a lot of non-Calgary listeners, but he's one of those pure, woke, hipster, self-righteous chodes, and he's just maddening, and it just looks really good on him to see him under investigation for apparently a road rage incident. We'll get more of the details of whatever that incident was, I guess, down the road, but it sounds like there was some property damage potentially involved, and they've brought in, so he stepped down from the police commission, and I'm sure that the police commission is breathing a sigh of release, or at least police officers, because that commission's been terrible. And Edmonton police are investigating on this issue now, which makes sense, because again, when you had a former member of a police commission, still, even if he stepped down, he holds some degree of sway and authority within there. So you don't want to see that conflict of interest going on with a gentleman who has some degree of influence on the police while being investigated. So the Edmonton police are looking into that, and hopefully we see some more news leaking and coming out on that soon. So, okay, and shortly we're going to get on to our next guest, and that's Lindsay Wilson of Alberta Proud. And we're going to talk about something that was really counterintuitive and unexpected and almost strange, and that was Stephen Guilbeault actually approving an oil pipeline project. So Lindsay's set up in the studio here. Hey, Lindsay, good to see you back.
Hey, good. Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and welcome to the newer, larger studio. We're not mashed into that little one that we were before. It was always
you got a lot of room here now. That's
quite
great.
adequate. Yes. So I appreciate you coming in. You put in a column. We got that up this morning. You've been with Alberta Proud for quite some time. You guys advocate a lot on energy issues, Western issues, things like that. And the big project, I guess, Bay du Nord. Maybe if you want to explain what that is and what happened with Stephen Guilbeault there.
Well, much to our surprise, it seemed that our uneven Stephen, as we like to call our environment minister, became just slightly less uneven this last week. So we think that this is a big win. This is something to really celebrate here in Alberta, because maybe it's showing that the tides are changing, and perhaps it took the Ukraine war for the world to see, and for Ottawa to start to see that, Alberta, Canada needs to become a global supplier of energy, and we need pipelines to do it. So it's pretty exciting that this is our first deep water drilling offshore project that has been approved, and it's I think the fifth oil project out in Newfoundland and Labrador. So this is very exciting for the East Coast. Typically, it's been a have-not region, of course, and this is going to provide thousands of jobs, and they're estimating around $3.5 billion into the coffers for sure. And looks good. So, and they're saying, I think about, could push as much as 200,000 barrels a day of oil, and beginning production about 2028. So it's surprising to us because Uneven Stephen, with his own past and with Greenpeace and Equiterre, and he is an eco-radical, and he's come out on record saying that he wants to phase out oil and gas in as early as 18 months, something he later retracted, but still that was said, and the tone started there. And for him to come out and support this project, it really shows you that perhaps common sense is finally trumping ideology. And even though the NDP are pushing back on it, and there's a lot of eco-radical groups out there pushing back on it, we are going to tip our hat to him for now, for giving the green light on this.
And I mean, it was a reality check. I think it would happen. As we said, the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, energy prices are through the roof. People are quite finally, getting upset, realizing, holy cow, we've been importing oil from those guys over there, and we have domestic resources. They just would have looked terrible if they'd rejected the Bay du Nord in the midst of all of this. I suspect, because they delayed it a few times too, though, right? Like this should have been approved a while ago, but it's a good sign. I mean, they faced the reality. We just can't stop these projects yet. But do you think that reality is going to spread to Western ones? Because as Claudette pointed out, the Suncor expansion got rejected, and they still don't seem terribly more receptive of Western Canadian projects than they do the Eastern one at this time.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, it's anybody's guess right now. And when there's a war happening, I think, it really depends on how long this gets dragged out. But we're hopeful. We produce the cleanest energy in the world, and we can transport it by pipelines. That's the safest way to supply the world with it. So it's conflict-free oil. It's ethically produced. It's just a complete no-brainer. And everything shows that global demand for energy is going to increase and not decrease. So why can't we lead that way? Just doesn't make sense any other way.
Yeah, it's been counterintuitive. I mean, Germany kind of learned that reality check. They were held up for years. Look at these guys; they're net zero, and they've gone so green, and they've got the wind generation and the solar, but then when push came to shove, we found out no, they've also become incredibly dependent upon foreign sources of energy, and it left them in a terrible situation today. And they're reevaluating their entire energy future. Hopefully Canada gets some more of that reality coming into place. That's the word I keep using over and over, it's reality.
It is, it's common sense, and the European Union has determined that natural gas is green energy, and we need to be doing that here too.
So another country that doesn't seem to be facing reality, though, is the United States. President Biden has been constantly pointing out that, we need to get off of Russian oil, thus we need to get more Saudi oil, we need to get more Venezuelan oil, we need to get more Nigerian oil. But the words Canadian oil just don't seem to come from his mouth. I mean, maybe the Geritol overwhelmed his tongue before he could say it, or they just won't consider Canadian oil. Like, shouldn't we see Guilbeault and Trudeau lobbying him, saying, look, we've got clean, ethical oil here, bring that bloody pipeline back, and let's, allow us to help you guys out.
Well, let's, they're midterm now in the States. So hopefully, I can't even imagine if we had, an anti-resource leadership right now in the province, and how much further that would bring us back. But hopefully, I know there was some representation from the States that was up the other day, and speaking with the province about that. So let's hope that the current provincial government can keep advocating strong, and that just the global pressures just, cause Trudeau and Uneven Stephen to keep being a little less uneven and start getting on board,
Well, and to speak for myself, I suspect Stephen's going to be uneven forever. That's his nature. That's what he's about. But he still has bosses, and he still has, a government. I mean, this is a government that seems to be reactive rather than proactive. I mean, I'll tie it into something unrelated, but in the sense with the Emergencies Act, it wasn't really till all the banks came in and said, guys, you're killing us. We're having a bank run. You got to back off. 2 days later, they got rid of the act because reality had to set in. And so even these guys can figure it out. But I just don't have faith they're thinking long yet. I mean, they should at least be talking about that. They should be saying, well, let's expedite the Trans Mountain expansion that's been creeping along ever so slowly, or reconsider Energy East, or lobby to get something like the Keystone, if not the Keystone itself, expanding its stuff. And they've been dead silent on it.
Yeah, and I think really at this point we just need to hit them hard with pushing, all the good stories, and all the boon it will do for our economy and for Canada as a whole. And This is where alternative media comes in, because we know that the legacy media isn't telling the stories about the energy sector, the positive stories, that focus on the negative stories, which are actually fewer and further between than people realize. And we just need to hit them hard with information. We do that through Alberta Proud. We have a Facebook following of over 200,000 people. We're on all the other social media channels, and we have a network that we share amongst, and share a lot of graphics, stories, alternative media, videos, that sort of thing, and gets really good reach. And awareness is everything, and getting people out come election time to vote for pro-resource candidates. It's everything. It's imperative. We can't back down.
Yeah, and just that reminder with Alberta Proud, that's your biggest presence is Facebook, where you are there, right? Like you've got a website as well, but the most interactivity and lobbying and I guess promotion of Western energy sources comes from there on the Facebook site.
Yeah, so again, we do have a following of over 200,000 people on Facebook, and that is our biggest reach. But we're also on Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and all of it.
There's
LinkedIn,
so
LinkedIn
now,
even.
yeah.
I know you try and list them all, but we're on all of them, and everybody has their own way they like to reach out. But Facebook is definitely where we share things on our network, and we reach millions of people. So it is really powerful, and I'm always encouraging people to communicate with me, send a Facebook message, or send an email to me, lindsay.wilson@strongandproud.ca, and send me in graphic story ideas, different things like that. And I'm happy to get that out there. And, it's all about telling Alberta's story. It's about talking about our energy sector and about our resource sector and about how great we are as a province. And we just think we're the best. I know we're the best.
Well, we know that. We just got to convince our federal leaders that we do for now.
Keep banging on their door.
As you said, with graphical stories, is more of a polite term to use for memes.
Yeah.
I mean, they shouldn't be under. I mean, there's a lot of funny ones and goofy ones out there, but there's a lot of. It's a good way to communicate short form. You can put serious messages across. This is, to use the cheesy old cliche, but a picture says 1,000 words, and there's sometimes a nice big long column, which I write those long boring things all the time.
I read them.
which can cover a lot of ground. But I mean, sometimes a snapshot with just even a funny caricature can get that same serious message out and in a good transferable way to a lot of people who wouldn't typically read those. So that's a lot of what you guys do as well.
Yeah, it's really powerful. We live in this age of instant gratification, instant communication. People scroll, they often don't click. They go on headlines and pull quotes and photos. They like short videos, videos that are 20 seconds, 30 seconds long. So we just try and hit people from all those meanings. But yeah, it's amazing. Like a meme says 1,000 words. And if you go and follow us, like we do have a lot of fun, lighthearted stuff. And we've got, I'm a farm girl, and we've got a lot of, farmer stuff and stuff that we feel really connects with the average Albertan. And, but we do say a lot politically on there too. We are nonpartisan. We're a nonprofit organization, and we are largely reliant on, the donations from everyday Albertans like you and me. But we do make it very clear that we support pro-resource candidates when it comes down to election time, and we can't get behind candidates who, speak out against our energy sector particularly. So we make that. So you'll see a lot of, you will see a lot of anti-Notley and a lot of anti-Trudeau stuff on our pages.
Well, they're not supportive of us. We're not going to be nice to them. If they want to turn around and be nice to the West, maybe they'll get some nice...
Absolutely.
That's the way it works. Agriculture you brought up, I mean, it's not just energy. That's just been kind of more your prime focus. And a lot of it ties together. That's another freight train that's kind of approaching right now, though, with the mess going on in Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine, it sounds like their crop output's going to be dropped by half this year. And they are a large provider in the world markets for grain and oil seeds and a lot of things. The next biggest one almost is Canada, Saskatchewan, Alberta, the rest, as well as potash, things like that.
Absolutely.
Do you guys promote on some of those fronts and things like that as well? Or?
Yeah, we are very focused on pipelines and energy, but absolutely, I grew up on a cattle ranch, and so that's very near and dear to my heart. I support farmers. Anytime we'll share a meme about, hug a farmer or anything like that, like it goes crazy. It resonates, I think, with the people who follow us. And if you're eating today, thank a farmer, right? We believe strongly in that. So, generally speaking, Alberta Proud stands for, we stand up to, elitist, hypocritical celebrities, politicians, those who oppose our energy sector. We stand up for smaller government, not bigger government, and more common sense. So, supporting our farmers and supporting investment into our agriculture sector, into all the agri-tech that's coming on, coming down the pipeline, so to speak. It makes sense. It aligns with us for sure.
Yeah, well, and a couple of things that have been pressuring agricultural producers have been, rail capacity, because of course, due to our lack of pipelines, we're packing our railways with oil products right now to get them to market. If we could get that oil out of those trains and into some pipes, we could be moving a lot more seed and product and fertilizer. I mean, these things all tie together, and the carbon tax, of course, which is beating on everybody, really pressures agricultural producers as well. I mean, there's credits, but it's not efficient and it's troublesome. So it's just, they meld together, and this is being a resource economy in the West that I think our leaders in Ottawa don't understand that. And they have an anti-rural attitude, I think, quite often, dismissive. I mean, you hear them, you drive a pickup truck, as if it's a sin or something bad.
Absolutely, but you can't fit hay bales in the back of a car. So.
No, and a little Hyundai accent doesn't get up to that oil lease on a muddy road up north when you're looking to check and service a pump jack or something like that.
No, and we do often stress, like through Alberta Proud, that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to these unreliable alternatives. We're not ready to get rid of oil and gas. We're nowhere close to that. And replacing, our vehicles with electric vehicles that are made of these tiny little components, often made by slave labor in third world countries. And then they come here, they're used, they're driven. They're not ideal in the colder temperatures. It's just, we haven't perfected these technologies yet. And then they decompose in landfills. And what do you do with all these tiny parts? So, and same thing for wind turbines and that sort of thing. They're just made of all these tiny little components that don't decompose. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there, and we definitely like to call that out on a regular basis as well.
Well, there's a lot of one-side narrative. I mean, we've seen that in a lot of issues in general when a government takes a side on something. So cost benefit, they constantly talk about the benefits with whatever they may be, but they refuse to talk about the cost as we go electric options. I mean, the crazed push for electrical vehicles. I mean, they were pressuring manufacturers. They're now talking about pressuring retailers, even forcing them to sell electrical vehicles. But we don't have the infrastructure to charge the bloody things. That's the cost part they're forgetting to mention. Like, if we don't have the infrastructure or the means, are you going to let us open more hydro dams then? Or are you going to let us build nuke plants? Because the power's got to come from somewhere, but they don't talk about that.
Yeah, we're just not ready for it. And it doesn't, the government always likes to pit an us versus them, and they like to do that with these technologies. And, like we stress, like, these are alternative energy sources, and, the technology's not quite there yet. It doesn't trump oil and gas. It's not dirty oil. It's clean energy that we have here. It's the best in the world. We always say that we have best in the world, Canadian energy, Alberta energy.
Well, that's it. We're not opposed to alternatives. At least I'm not. If there was a breakthrough and they said, we got this car with a solar panel on top and it's electric and it'll charge itself and it'll only cost you $30,000 and it can drive for 1,200 kilometers. Hey, I'm in. I'll go for it. I'll buy it. It's not there yet. It's just not even close.
It's not there yet. I'm going to keep driving my Dodge half-ton for now.
Yeah. Likewise for home heating. I mean, people forget it's not little gremlins that make your furnace go and make your water hot or anything like that at night. It's a pipeline, even if a small one, it's bringing you gas, and it keeps it relatively affordable. I mean, look at the electricity prices these days already as it is. Imagine electric heat on top of it.
I can't even imagine it. And, I just want to give a shout out to all our men and women that are working out on the oil sands and working out there on cold days to keep us warm. When we have those stretches of -30, I always think about those folks out there, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a tough job. I was in the field for 20 years myself,
wow.
And there's things I miss. I miss some of the travel and stuff. I don't miss the weather extremes, not in the slightest.
No.
4 years in the Arctic, but we still need those resources. We need to promote them. I mean, something else that people I guess get confused is they ask, well, if we're producing it all here and such, why are our prices not lower? And it's fair enough, but we're based on world commodity prices. We don't want another national energy program. We don't want to force them to sell at a lower rate domestically. Though if we bring more on stream, then the world prices will drop a bit. But the advantages are we can get some tax breaks if we're bringing in oil and gas revenue, whether it's in Newfoundland or out here in Alberta or Saskatchewan or BC or any of those places. I mean, I guess some of the anti-energy people or anti-oil, they say, oh, look, you still get screwed at the pump because the price is high. Well, wait, you're benefiting in a whole lot of ways with some great health care and a government that's posting surpluses in Alberta now and things such as that. And that's very much due to a lot of energy resource development.
And, as the oil source past $100 a barrel, like, this is an exciting time, right? Like, And just to tie it back to everything with uneven Stephen approving this Beta Nord project last week, it's positive. Like, I feel really good right now. I feel like maybe I'm hopeful there's going to be a shift in this paradigm, shift away from this ideology into this common sense and putting our energy on the world stage.
Yeah, we can hope it's a tipping point, that they're realizing that, and we can all benefit.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming in to talk with us again today then. And again, just a reminder to everybody where they can find information on what you guys are up to and any other initiatives you got coming up soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just reach out to us and check out our new sweet merchandise. We've got some great hoodies and toques and t-shirts, something for everybody. And it's at shop.albertaproud.org. And yeah, find us on Facebook.
Great. Well, thanks. Well, that's Lindsay Wilson of Alberta Proud coming into the studio. And again, well, the name kind of says it all and what it's all about. So I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Thanks for coming in. And everybody look at that weather out there. Let's thank those oil and gas producers for you're not freezing to death today, because it's horrible outside.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go on to digital currency while we're at it. And I will talk about one of our sponsors while Lindsay makes her way out of here, and that's bitcoinwell.com. While I was speaking to the benefits of our sorry, I've lost my train of thought there for a moment. Our subscribers, that's it. Okay, I got a little bit distracted. Of course, subscribers help us pay our bills. Subscribers are the way we do things right now. And as well, its sponsors. And Bitcoin Well has been a fantastic sponsor for us so far. If you're looking to get into the world of digital currencies, looking to hedge your bets, we don't trust this federal government. I mean, they came after our bank accounts. They will take your money if they are given half a chance. Bitcoin Well helps lead you into digital currencies. They can put your funds into a safe place and they can lead you there. If you're not experienced with digital currencies, I wasn't initially. These guys, that's their job, is to facilitate you, show you how it works, show you how a cold wallet works, how a hot wallet works. How do you get a ledger? How do you keep your currency safe? They're a Western Canadian company. They're publicly traded because, of course, everybody's biggest fear is of being ripped off. I mean, there's a lot of, unfortunately, scam artists out there, and they're trying to take your money. Bitcoin Well is not one of those. They never actually hang on to your money. They are a service that helps you get into the Bitcoin itself. As you can see with Bitcoin Academy, they will teach you how the digital currency works. But you will always maintain control of your money. Check them out, bitcoinwell.com online. It's an Alberta company. They're well worth looking into, and they've been a great sponsor for us. So, yes, as we saw with Lindsay, it was interesting to see crazy Stephen Gilboa. She's more polite than me. She'll say uneven, I'll say crazy. You look at those pictures of him, if you search him out, where he's in his orange jumpsuit, where he's being arrested and taken to court and is grinning ear to ear for one of his extreme acts. And this is, one of the top fellows with the Trudeau government. That's really of some serious concern. But even he, or at least his bosses in the government, as far as that goes, had said, look, you got to back down. You've got to approve these projects because the world commodity markets just don't allow you not to. But we still can't trust these guys. And we're always going to keep pushing back. And that's what Alberta Proud does. They can help out there. Nico found that picture. I mean, look at that just bizarre grin on his face and everything. It's almost kind of creepy, But this is one of the senior cabinet ministers in Ottawa. And they unfortunately have a lot of impact upon our lives. But seeing him back off a little bit, can only be positive. All right, let's look a little bit more on what do we got going on the news. Dave mentioned that earlier. Some sweetheart tax deals have been alleged in internal memos. And it sounds like senior Canada Revenue Agency executives are suspected of arranging sweetheart tax treatment for large corporations. Like, we've got a government that's really sinking badly into corruption. We do. And it's not necessarily, people always look at the elected officials, and they're tied into it and everything else. But there's a giant bloated civil service. And this is where a lot of the misdoings are going on. This is where the problems are. And it looks like they've been giving preferential treatment, at least in one case, for an unidentified company, at least at this point, and then had employees rubber stamp the deal. This is your money, guys. And there's a staff complaint, I guess, that came in and says, what did they get out of this? Prestige, a feeling of power, influence, future favors, or perhaps 10 million in his Swiss account. Now that's speculation. Let's not get it wrong. We haven't seen or proven that anybody's getting money in a Swiss account, but we've got some very big things of concern. We've been getting a lot of these stories from all of these committee hearings and things like that with CRA, with our revenue agency. And these guys manage your money. Speaking of, I was talking before with Bitcoin and how you can manage your own money with it. Well, these guys are the ones that manage the rest of your money, their Revenue Canada or CRA these days. And it's scary. So, there's somebody questioning it, saying it's wrong no matter what they do, and that they're going to go to the Auditor General and the Minister of Revenue. But how they catch these things, I don't know. So there's allegations of targeted so-called advanced pricing arrangements sought by multinational corporations for tax treatment of income tax, transfer between subsidiaries in different countries. And again, you see with this corrupted government, and it is corrupt, particularly in Quebec. I'll point my finger at it. That's where it's been, it's been noted before. I think there was a columnist got into a whole bunch of crap, or was it a politician, for calling it a culture of corruption in Quebec. But it's true. They look at corruption differently than we do. There's a more accepting attitude of it. If you want to see the most corrupt civil government, there's a story on civil governments being corrupted lately too. Look at Montreal. My God, those guys are tied in with the bloody mafia out that way. Brutal. And our dollars are getting filtered away from us. And that frustrates when they talk about, these are always large multinational corporations with these scams. They move their money in and out of our country unfettered. You don't get those kinds of advantages with your money. And look at the We charity, if you want to call it that scam that, again, Teflon Trudeau, somehow his close ties with those clowns, the Kielberg brothers or whatever they were, with this wretched charity that just took millions and millions of dollars, all sorts of government support. Trudeau's mommy got lots of good money to talk to them and things like that. International, of course. No charges, no follow-up. What's happened? I mean, they seem to have kind of gone underground. I guess the gravy train might have rolled to a stop, but I'm sure they've socked away plenty. And that's what I mean. It's that general attitude. And this might not be really, the way that might not be related to what this CRA thing is, but we've got, as the term I used earlier, a culture of corruption going on there. And your dollars are being stolen. It's not straight a hand into your wallet. No, they pull it in through your tax payments. And then it gets filtered around to good friends and buddies, as Jackie's pointing out, SNC Lavalin. It's not just tax treatment. Yeah, they're just direct subsidies to, again, predominantly Quebec corporations all the time. Your money put into their pockets. And it's always the big ones, and the failure rate. I don't think the government should be in the business of subsidizing any business anyway. They always pick losers. It leads to corruption. It leads to problems. But if they have to, they don't have to. If for some reason you just absolutely have to, and you're going to spend $1 billion on subsidies, that's as much as the government will sometimes give a single business. Well, often that single business won't give us much return on that $1 billion of tax dollars that they gave to someone else. Well, what if you took that $1 billion and gave out 100,000, $10,000 tax grants to small startups for small businesses to get rolling? It's the same amount of money. Even if 50% of those businesses with that extra little $10,000 to help get them going went broke, 50% of them wouldn't. And those would be the small businesses, the little restaurants, the hairstylists, the landscape companies, the independent auto lot that just needed a little bit or whatever. These are the ones that'll last a while. A guy with a little construction company, an artist trying to get their stuff out. A $10,000 seed loan could make all the difference between starting and going down. But the government doesn't help little businesses. They don't like little businesses. They like their big corporate friends. Little businesses don't take them to those nice cocktail events, where they can rub shoulders with the famous. They won't wine them and dine them. And of course, they won't give them large kickbacks. Large businesses can, and they do. And so again, I mean, I don't think we should be subsidizing any of them. Just cut everybody's taxes. This is a dreamland. I understand that. This is just the libertarian in me talking. But just get out of the business of being in business altogether in my dreamland and drop the taxes and let smart business people move ahead, because we've got lots of them, big businesses and small. I mean, I'm not all against big business. We need big businesses. We need big corporations. Not everything can be done on a mom and pop level. Not everything can be done with a good economy of scale. I mean, big business does help us with a lot of affordability, and they employ a lot of people. But unfortunately, a lot of those bigger ones also get caught up in that subsidy mess and that corruption and that ugliness. Loblaws. What was it? They got I remember that came up when I owned my restaurant in our pub. And, one of the things, if you own a food service industry, one of your most huge expenses is refrigeration. It drove me nuts. I thought, if anything, I should have gone to school to learn how to service refrigeration equipment, because I had, I think, like 18 different pieces of refrigeration, from the beer coolers to the freezers to the walk-in cooler to front end pop displays, you name it. And it just seemed there was always one or the other was breaking down. They're very expensive to get repaired, very expensive to replace. And it was at that time, Loblaws, billions and billions of money, got a giant grant of millions of dollars to get a whole bunch of new freezer equipment under some BS green thing. Really? Here I am, again, rolling nickels to make the bills during wintertime when things are slow in the pub. Yeah, in winter, you still need refrigeration. And I'm paying these bills, and these big bloated giants are getting my tax dollars tossed to them when they don't need it. Again, that's just constant when we see that the government with that corruption and that inbred world that they live in. Again, it gets back to my push for independence, because I think we need a big flush and we need a big cleanup. And we're going to talk to, actually, tomorrow, I'll say at the end of the show too, but a couple of guests, Rob Anderson. He's been working on something of an independence project, and I'll be talking to the leader of the Saskatchewan Buffalo Party, and we'll be moving on to those subject matter and things like that. As more people realize the Canadian system's broken, I think more people are concluding that we do need to shake it up. We need to break it down. We need to rebuild it. And I personally think independence and an independence movement is the best way to get there. We aren't there yet. So here's another one from the CRA again. I'm just following my stories here. Junkets and Facebook friends, internal human resources reports detail dysfunction in senior management at the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, including one executive who hired Facebook friends. Yeah, so made friends on Facebook. Hey, I'll give you a job. Sure. One of those nice government jobs, big bloated pension and massive amounts of vacation time and overtime deals that are incredibly sweet. Yeah. Apparently that's going on in the CRA with their executives too. Isn't that nice? And he was suspected of billing taxpayers for his junkets abroad. Isn't it nice when you can travel for free? Boy, and bill the government. So this is a briefing for the Director General. A certain level of dysfunction exists within the existing working relationships. Further action will likely be required in order to remedy the apparent toxic nature of the workplace, read the confidential memo. Records didn't name any manager who was fired as a result of proven or alleged misconduct. You see, that's going further into what's going on too. When you get a culture of corruption, it spreads. So this is showing that it's causing difficulty among other people in the workplace. If you are one of the drones who sits in your office cubicle and perhaps, you're a mid-level bureaucrat and you're doing okay, you're with CRA, but still you're watching it going on. You're watching your boss, you're watching the executives taking trips on the company card, giving money to their buddies, things such as that, and hiring Facebook friends. You're going to get more discontent. And that's how you're going to get more employees, again, acting out, abusing their roles within there. And we're not talking about, speaking of big business, CRA employs tens of thousands of people. We get to pay for them. So this same executive apparently was found to criticize other coworkers over drinks at a 2-hour birthday party. Yeah. So, this is the director failed to show professionalism and respect when discussing sensitive information pertaining to 2 agency managers. So what we got is just a jerk in a senior level executive. But you see, it's more the rot. It's the whole thing. And what are we looking at? 5-figure business class trips to Jamaica, Japan, whether in-person attendance meetings was required or not. And they aren't. Come on, guys. We've shown this last couple of years. If we learned anything, most meetings can be done remotely. We can do it through Zoom. We can do it through StreamYard here. We can do all sorts of things. But these guys are flying all over the world. What the hell does the CRA need to go over there for anyways? Why does a tax bureaucrat, paper-pushing monkey need to fly across the country on our dime to hang around and rub shoulders with a bunch of other tax-taking monkeys? Well, because they can. Because we let them. And you get to pay for it. Isn't that an honor? All right. Enough ranting about CRA. We're going to bring another guest in so we can rant about some other things. So as Myke starts to get set up, I will talk about another one of our sponsors, and that's the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. These guys, their name sort of says it all and what they are about. They're an association for people who own firearms and enjoy them, whatever means you might want to use with your firearms. If you're a collector, whether you're a target shooter, a hunter, any of those things. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. It's your business. It's your property. Well, these guys, their name says it all. They're an association of other firearm owners because, like anything, if it's something that's important to you, it's good to be able to network with other people who enjoy those things, share resources, whether it's videos on safe firearm use or links to upcoming shows and events. Like I said, this Friday and Saturday, the Western Standard is going to be at that firearms show on the Sutina Reserve. I'll be there on Friday. These guys advertise those sorts of things. And then, of course, most importantly of all, is they are lobbying on your behalf. They got multiple court challenges out on your behalf against the Liberal government because they keep recategorizing your firearms, trying to take away your property, and they have taken the government to court. But they need you. They need you as a member because, hey, these things aren't free. And if you don't stand up for your own rights, they will be taken away. We're seeing that every day. So check them out, the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Their website is cssa-cila.org. And hey, take out a membership. Protect your property and rights, guys, because if you don't do it, nobody else will. And well, that's where we're sitting with that today. So we've got Myke Thomas in the studio today. This is the nicer things with having our bigger expanded studio. 2 guests in studio on the same day. That's the first time we've done that. So groundbreaking history being made today, Myke.
It's amazing. I got to don't write this down, put it in the diary.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So we'll have large crowds going on in here before you know it. Well, we still got a little bit of room to go there. So,
well, we could fit a couple more people.
We can, and we probably will. We're going to be doing great around here. Part of it's you've been providing a lot of great columns, and
thank you.
Appreciate it. And an issue that's kind of been near and dear to your heart. You write about all sorts of things, which is great, but a lot on real estate and a lot on housing, and that's been the big issue. I mean, it was the big federal government. The other bloated giant budget was that they're going to save us all with our housing. And then now we've seen Mr. Poilievre as well as he's coming up with his housing plans. And well, you've shared your thoughts on it. Where do you think they're all going with it?
Well, let's talk about the budget. I just want to say that I want to give kudos to whoever wrote the opening stanza to the housing thing, because they fully realize that the federal government can do nothing about increasing the supply of housing. They can throw money at it forever, but they can't dictate what can be built where. That's up to the municipalities individually under guidance from the government. In Alberta, it's the MGA. After that, it's a mess. They're talking about putting $4 billion over 5 years into the hands of the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and then they will use that money to incentivize, is their word. My word is bribe municipalities. So they'll get X number of dollars for every new house that's built. But you're running into a conflict of personalities, I think, here. We know what city council is like in Calgary. I doubt it's any different anywhere else in the country. But when one level of government comes in and tries to influence another level of government, that level that they're trying to influence pushes back. Mm-hmm. One example, I guess, would be there's a provincial election coming up in Ontario pretty soon. And part of Doug Ford's campaign, his platform, is a new housing policy. And what he's talking about is building more multifamily houses in areas where there aren't a lot of multifamily houses. And he's focusing on duplexes and fourplexes right now. That's going to cause a problem because of the NIMBYism that you've got. I know here it would be a huge problem. Calgary already has a higher density thing called Planet Calgary that was brought in under the Nesh regime that dictates how many multifamily houses can be built in each new community versus single family houses. And it's slanted heavily towards multifamily, which is fine. I have no problem with that. Ford, I think, is being smart in terms of staying away from talking about high rises, but at some point in time that has to happen. And putting high rises into established neighborhoods especially is impossible. You just can't get it done. And even here, if if a homeowner is incentivized by the federal budget, and they're not going to be, they could tear down their single family house and build a fourplex on that thing. But in Calgary, I don't know what's like elsewhere, you have to go to city council, stand in line and address council and say, this is what I want to build. This is why I want to build it. Then they ask you all these crazy questions. What color is the house going to be? Are you going to have a roof? I mean, I'm being silly, but the questions are like that. And then what gets to happen is that people, your neighbors or potential neighbors, get to step up and tell you or tell council why they don't want that house in the neighborhood. It's ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous system. I remember once years ago, and it's heartbreaking, this poor old lady whose husband had died, and she wasn't making a lot of money. She's living on the dole, but she wanted to she wanted to add a basement suite in her house for income purposes. And her son and daughter were going to pay for the construction for the basement suite. She had to go down and talk to council to get permission to do this. And people got up and said, well, no, we don't want that kind of house in our neighborhood. And this lady had to get up and explain her entire financial situation, her husband dying. And it's just like, you watch this and go, this is so stupid. And I'm going on a lot, which I do, but back to the budget, that's the kind of problem that is facing everybody. And that budget will solve none of it. I mean, the tax-free savings plan, good idea, but you'd have to put $1,000 a month away for like 120 months to even get close to having a down payment. So that's not going to happen. I mean, it's nice to have a few extra bucks to add to your down payment.
Any tax reduction is still good. I mean,
sure.
It's a drop in the bucket compared to where the bigger issues are.
It is a drop in the bucket. Yeah. The supply issue is huge. They got to figure that out. And then they need to get all the municipalities, because it's not just Calgary. It's Vancouver's got the same problem. Toronto, they've got restrictions there. Vancouver's are really, really hard, severe. But they have to figure that out because I think they're talking about 200,000 new immigrants into the country every year is what they want. Traditionally, the bulk of those people will go to Toronto or they will go to Vancouver. And so you got the two markets in the country that are the most expensive and the most difficult to build in, welcoming the most people. No amount of $4 billion over 5 years is going to fix that.
And you don't need a crystal ball to see. We got a crunch coming. Like, let's address it. I mean, as you said, they started the budget right. They realized supply is the problem. You got to make more. Okay, they figured out the basis of economics. If you got more supply, the price can come down.
Yeah.
Another problem that happens with this, though, is, and I got to admit, I like to blame government for everything, but a lot of it is actually existing homeowners, because it's kind of in our interest to keep that supply throttled. And I'll even use kind of a personal example. My father got into his place in Canmore decades ago at a very good price. Now that Canmore shuts down every possible expansion and new project, every time they shut one down, the value of his property shoots up all the more.
Yeah.
Plus, he doesn't have to deal with as much of a crowded town. Not saying he's one of the ones lobbying council and everything, saying shut everything down, but there's a very much of an incentive for existing homeowners to not see an expansion of the market. Even if they aren't consciously lobbying for that, they aren't necessarily eager to see anything that'll bring a stabilizing or downward pressure against the value of their house.
Yeah. Well, home ownership is very emotional. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, there's buy a house and after 50 or 20 years, you're going to have equity. You're going to make money on your purchase. That's always been true. But the emotional factor of housing gets in the way of a lot of decisions and a lot of things that should be done. And I don't know how you fix that. I mean, I don't think fix is the right word. How do you change that?
It's tough. I mean, I'm still, I'm happy with where I am. I've got a place down in Prentice just outside of Calgary. You know what? Calgary's rotten civic policies serve me great because people are fleeing the city to the suburbs and places outside of it. And again, it's putting my value up. But I mean, personally, I'm still happy with where I'm at. I'm okay if it doesn't rise. get some more supply, guys. Get out there. I mean, the city just shut down a bunch of proposed expansions. I think it takes 8 years to get from planning to construction in the city of Calgary.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
So, I mean, the problem, we don't need to, like where you're getting, I think, we don't need to spend more money on it. We just need the government to get out of the way, as applies to so many other issues.
Yeah, and that was a small part of the budget. They did mention that, and they didn't use this language. Well, what they were saying is that the municipalities have to do something about all the red tape that they make developers go through. But you also have to remember that red tape is a revenue source for the city. The biggest revenue source for any municipal government is property taxes, and the fees and taxes that they put on builders and developers at City Hall for permits and inspections and all the other stuff. So the municipalities, I think, are not that interested in getting rid of this bureaucracy, which in fact, despite the fact it's huge and expensive, still makes money for them.
Yeah, and we broke that down a while back when I had Shane Wins along, because he worked in that world a lot, and pointed out like all of these steps, and there was all of these different, and every one of them costs millions. I mean, we're talking larger developments. Well, it gets passed down to consumers. It's not, people say, oh, let the developer eat it. Well, they don't. They pass it down. And then you go through all that, and then 5 years in, it gets rejected. Well, you've just lost millions of dollars that the city took.
Yeah. Land development is the biggest gambling game in the world, I think. Because you buy the land, and it's going to take you 10 to 15 years before you're going to start seeing money coming back on that money you spent. Now you're going to see more coming back, obviously, but you're laying down $15-20 million to buy a big chunk of land, and you get nothing back on that for 10 or 15 years because of the hoops that you have to hop through.
Yeah, well, and there's an ideology, as you kind of touched upon, and we see that with municipal governments everywhere. A lot of them are dominated by a density thing. They feel it has to be dense. It has to be dense. We have to push development inward. But I mean, I've written on that before. Every place where you have a high density urban living, the cost of living is through the roof. Yeah. I mean, if we look at areas, if we want to keep cost of living low, if we want to keep houses affordable, you've got to let them grow out. You have to. Phoenix, Houston, Dallas, Las Vegas, all got great. In fact, Portland even allows outward growth. Hipster central, and it's reasonable. But anywhere where they squeeze it, Manhattan, San Francisco, Vancouver, your costs through the roof. But we need a whole change of attitude from these municipalities.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Again, it goes back to who's buttering the bread, so to speak. But you mentioned Phoenix, and I'm quite familiar with the Phoenix area, and I don't know that Phoenix is the only city that has done this, but the Valley of the Sun is actually made up. The Phoenix area is 8 separate cities that circle Greater Phoenix, and so they're all connected on a freeway. You don't know if you're on the freeway, if you're in Chandler or Gilbert or Mesa. You just know where you're going. But what happens is that the individual cities have their individual tax bases, and then they share revenues to get the roads built and things like that. So they're not swallowing the whole pill. And so it makes it a little bit easier financially to spread out like that.
Yeah, well,
which they didn't do here.
No. And again, there's that, and I still call it a myth when you look at the numbers. They say, oh, the inner city subsidizing the suburbs, and we're pouring the money in to help. I mean, again, new developments, the developer eats all of those infrastructure costs. The last time I looked, I'm seeing the inner city getting ripped up all the time to replace aging infrastructure. Nobody's subsidizing anybody. I mean, inter area pointing fingers, I think, doesn't help.
No,
but it's they act as if the infrastructure in the inner city is permanent. No, it still has to be replaced. Plus, if you densify an inner city neighborhood, quite often you will overwhelm the existing utility. So you still got to root it all out and rebuild it.
Well, they're talking about doing all the residential units in downtown Calgary, and I don't know. I've never been able to find out exactly how many they're talking about. But the extra pipes and toilets and sinks and stuff like that they're going to have to put in there. The question is, can the infrastructure underneath those buildings handle it? So your point is well taken. They may have to just rip it up.
Well, that's it. You go into, and I don't know the limits of it, but you go into, say, Crescent Heights and those areas that are nice areas around the city, and they're really putting a lot of infills in. And you drive down that residential street, though, and it's bump, 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 bump. Because what they've had to do with every new infill is cut into the road and dig in and tap it into another sewer. Well, if you're doubling the population, I'm certain when they put those water and sewer lines in there 80, 100 years ago, sometimes they're going to run out of space.
Yeah.
But the city doesn't like to talk about that.
No, and I guess the other thing that's happening in terms of real estate is, and I wrote a story about it today, and that is that the Toronto and Vancouver in particular have the bidding wars, big time bidding wars, but they're starting to fall back. Vancouver has seen less. A lot of people aren't getting involved in a bidding war. What a lot of people would do is they would put their house on the market at a price that they knew was below market value. And then people would see that and go, oh, let's get that house because it's below market value. So they'll put a bid in and they end up bidding it up. Like the one that Nabi was talking about earlier, the house went up $800,000 over asking. That's starting to fall back now. So I think getting back to the budget where obviously what they're trying to do is increase supply to stabilize the prices. I don't think they want to bring them down. They want to stabilize them. So it could be that the market's going to correct itself, which brings us to tomorrow and the Bank of Canada's rate announcement. And there's no doubt in my mind they're going to do 0.5, which is the biggest one-time raise in 4 or 5 years. So they'll do 0.5 tomorrow, which will take up the rate up to 1%, and then maybe a 0.5 again in early June. And then the speculation was that they would do another 3, 4, 5 increases through to the end of the year. But now I'm wondering about that because the market, like I say, in Toronto, Mississauga, Vancouver, not so much in Calgary yet. It's starting to slow down. The heat is really coming off of it, and it's just become slightly noticeable this week. So I think it's one of the old snowballs at the top of the mountain deal.
Yeah, it should wind down. Well, we'll see as interest rates rise. It makes it more,
well, it's more expensive
to get in, so people are going to back off. But there's still a crunch rental wise. I mean, people still, hopefully we see more coming onto the market. Maybe we'll move on quickly. Just something else you've written a couple of, like say you write about more than real estate. You've hit on Elon Musk and his Twitter purchase a couple of times. Hey, you wrote the columns. Let's go there.
Well, it's funny because for the longest time, I thought Elon Musk was one of the left-wing elites that hung around with Bill Gates and all that group and had the same political points of view. The war in Ukraine really kind of caught my attention when Musk opened up the Starlink system so that the Ukrainians didn't lose communication with the world. I thought that's not something that that a conservative would do that. And then this whole thing with Twitter, going, oh right, this guy's okay. But it's interesting. I think.
He's a fascinating guy. I mean, you don't agree with everything, at least with me, either that he does. Like, I don't like the amount of subsidies Tesla took in and things like that. But at the same time, he's his own person. I mean, he just kind of goes where he's going.
But, if the government's going to give you subsidies to build something like electric cars, which is huge on the government agenda, then take it. Take the money. Because if you don't take it, they're going to give it to somebody else. So in that particular case, a government subsidy, in my mind, is fine. Because that's money that is going to get spent regardless. So you might as well give it to somebody like Musk, who's smart enough to know what to do with it.
He's not going to martyr himself with it. I mean, he's turned around and said outright, guys, we need to develop more oil and gas. Not, hey, it's in his interest. The higher oil prices go, the better it is for his electric vehicle market. But he's just saying, no, we need this stuff right now. Get out there.
And the cleaning up Twitter, which I think he very intent to do that, is a great idea. I mean, it's a cesspool. I just hate Twitter. I can't tell you. So if he's prepared to clean it up, open it up, get free speech back on, and reinstate some of the people that have been banned, then I'm all for that. And I think that when he bought the big shares, the CEO took him aside and said, well, about you sitting on the board, I'm getting a lot of bad feedback from my employees about this is speculation on my part, okay? getting a lot of feedback. People are going to quit. We're going to lose all our employees. It's just going to be all hell going to break loose. So don't come on the board. The thing about not going on the board is if you're on the board, you're restricted to how many shares you can own. If you're not on the board, you can buy the whole thing. And Elon, I think, has got enough money to buy the whole thing. And if not, become the dominant partner. So if that's where he's going with it, and I really hope he is, that would be a signal to all of the social media people to smarten up your act.
Yeah, because they've been selective in who they're going to shut down and who they aren't. I mean, you got to be balanced. I mean, they're private company. It's a dicey area, because you don't really want intervention into a private company. Like, they should run their standards however they please. But when you're such a dominant giant and you have so much impact upon the information everywhere, it becomes troublesome. And watching him shake them up like that was just nice to see. And it shook them. It really shook them. I mean, part of what I see as being a cesspool, though, is that, and that's on the social media in general, is the anonymity. I understand. I got in a big discussion with that. Actually, it was with me and James Woods. And this is one of my weirder, higher profile Twitter followers, but he's outspoken. And a lot of people got upset because I agreed with him. I said, well, let's get rid of the anonymity. Okay, not get rid of it, but we should find a way to have verified accounts, even if the person didn't have their real name on it any longer. But it was said, it was proven that person is behind that account. I can't just spawn one with a Gmail account or spawn 10 of them or spawn 15 of them and have it voluntary, but don't leave it just the realm of the blue checks. Because it's amazing how much more polite a lot of people get when they have their real identity behind it.
I was just going to say that. And if they can remove the animosity level from Twitter, I think people would be more inclined to use their real names. I mean, on my social media,
it's a chicken and egg almost.
My social media, I always use my real name. I don't have any cutesy, funny blue-green slipper boy things. But you see other people on there, they don't want, because of the way they're using it, they don't want people to know who they are, because they're not just using it, they're abusing it.
Yeah, well, and there's some people who legitimately as well, and we are in a crazy world of cancel culture. And if they work for a crazy woke boss or with woke workmates, if they found out that they were tweeting something conservative on there, they could be losing a job. They could be pressured in the workplace. So I understand they're wanting to remain anonymous in it. But, I think there's ways we could address that. There's ways that you could at least, as I said, I kind of envision if you verify an account somehow between you and whatever social media provider, but you could still use an anonymous name even. That way keeps you to only one account. And that's the other thing too. You're not going to get too belligerent, because if you get your one and only account shut down, well, you're out of luck. Now, well, I got one shut down, I'll just spawn another one. But I just think there's room for discussions. I like seeing Musk shake it up and at least start re-examining. I mean, social media is new and it's evolving, but we've hit kind of a top point with only a handful of heavyweights providing.
But it's like everything else in the world. You get one good leader, and all of a sudden there's a whole bunch more followers. That is so true. So that'll happen. I think the thing that I like the most about Musk is that he is basically looking at the woke folk and going, yeah, shut up.
And they need it, and it's nice.
Yeah, they do.
But and I love that cesspool of Twitter, though. I mean, I can't help myself. I'm just looking at something I threw out. This shows, though, I guess here's my top tweet from the other day. I'm just pulling it up. It's scrolling so fast I can't even see it. So a 3-word tweet I put out yesterday that said, fuck your masks. And right now, let's see, there's 10,528 likes and 1,100 retweets. I guess that's a sad indication of how Twitter is on short form, on what actually appeals to people versus, I'll write a 1,200 word column and it gets a few thousand reads. But if I throw out some obscenities straight at, but it's, as long as you're not abusing people going on, it can still be a little short form and graphic and be fun to get a message across.
But it's also the cesspool part is people, the old hiding in mom's basement attacking people, because they're just cowards, dog cowards.
And it's not a left or right thing. It's every side's got these ones. We've always called them trolls, and it's a good term for them. You envision just a little dork in a mom's basement, unwashed and firing away. And I think more often than not, that's what you do have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No question about it.
Well, we're in interesting times anyways. It gives us lots to write about and
It
dwell
does.
on. And
Yeah, it
so,
does.
Elon gave you things to write on besides real estate, though you've got plenty of other stuff to go on. So before we let you go, is there more stuff you're working on in the near future here? Or?
There's a couple things, but I don't want to talk about right now because
Okay.
they're kind of up in the air. But I talked about the woke thing. I got to have a look at that. I'm working on a thing about what's going on with Disney. I don't know if you're familiar with that too much, but they've gone very weird. They're getting into lawsuits with the state of Florida. It's too complicated to talk about.
Yeah, I've heard little bits of it, but I haven't looked deep into that yet.
It's actually not pretty. What else have I got going on? I don't know.
There's always lots anyways.
Yeah.
As I said, just as another municipal person, I mean, I've been celebrating Kara's fall from grace, perhaps.
I saw that and I thought, nobody deserves that more.
Oh, and he's such a belligerent soul
I know.
when it comes to others. So
I've had some personal discussions with Kara.
it's what was it? There was another media member who tweeted that out. I think it was Brian Passafume. He said the striking news item in this nobody's taking note of is I think it's the first time that Kara has ever actually responded to a media inquiry. so
that could be true.
See again, and that's where some of the fun with Twitter can be. And some.
Well, I'm keen to find out exactly what the details are on that one.
Yeah, we'll be watching with great interest and smiles.
Yeah, that might be worth a visit to council.
Yeah, so
no, it won't.
Come on now. Look what it did to poor Rick. So,
yeah.
Oh, well, yes, I love Rick. Boy, I still think with that zany attitude of Rick is too many years of watching those clowns going ballistic in council.
Well, it would drive me crazy. I've been there enough. I go, no, this can't be real. It can't be real.
It gives him lots of material to keep us enjoying his friends.
Yeah. Well, bureaucracies are entertaining. They're not very handy
no, it's dark comedy.
Yes, dark comedy. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in to talk to me
Cory,
again
always
today.
a pleasure.
Yes, and I'm certain we'll be talking again soon. You're nearby, and I do appreciate it when you come to talk to the audience, Mike.
All right. Well, stay warm.
Yeah, we'll try.
It's crazy.
It's nuts. All right. So that was Western Standard columnist Myke Thomas. Get online, westernstandardonline.com. You'll see he is a prolific writer and a media person with a long history of experience through a number of publications. When I get those veteran writers on, I don't like to explain just how long some of them have been around, but they've been at it for a bit there. And let's talk about one of our sponsors, and that's Bitcoin Well. I'll talk about them one more time while Mike makes his way out there. These guys are an Alberta company. We're talking about big companies, small companies. These guys aren't one of the giant multinationals. They aren't, I don't think they're taking any subsidies. I couldn't see it. They facilitate you getting into the digital currency world, guys, and safely with the money that you worked hard for, protecting it and getting you involved. I've talked about it before. One of their plans is just awesome, for just kind of dipping your toe into the digital currency waters safely and easily. They've set us up with, and they'll do that for any company, a portion of all of your, a portion of your paycheck every month goes into a Bitcoin account. They help you set all that up. And then in the case of Western Standard, they actually match that up to a maximum percentage. So every month, trouble-free, pain-free, because I'm not good at saving money. I can't admit that. It just goes off into that side account and builds up for me over there. And, it's one of those savings plans, as we see with Nico putting up there. Even if you don't do it through your company, you can set it up in your own bank account with automatic debit and things like that to make it trouble-free and just putting a little money aside into something different, something that's not tied into, the Canadian currency and things like that. Hedge your bets against those sorts of things. And it's safe, non-custodial. They got ATMs all across Canada. They got a map on there showing where all of their ATMs are. So they make it as easy as possible and make it practical. So I mean, because that's what people imagine. Well, what good is it? Just sits there. Well, no, you can use it to pay your utility bills. So we saw Pierre Poilievre the other day. He used it to pay for, it was a publicity stunt, but he used it to pay for a pizza at a place he was at. These digital currencies are really spreading. So check them out, bitcoinwell.com, and take control of your money, guys. So let's see here. Is another person saying, see, this was the discussion. I see Saniko saying the ability to have an anonymous account strengthens freedom of speech. It's mixed. I agree somewhat. As I said to Mike, yeah, there's some people who could lose their jobs. There's people who don't feel they can speak out and they need an anonymous means to speak up. And I appreciate that. And they should have it. Nobody's talking about, at least I'm not talking about, taking away the ability to be anonymous. I'm just talking about bringing a level for those who choose not to be, or at least choose to have it verified one way or another, even if the public doesn't see what that account is. Because again, we've dealt with it. I've dealt with, again, I get on Twitter, I dive into that cesspool, I invite it, I stir people up, I tick them off. And I'll get sometimes, and you can tell some clown, as Myke was talking about, who's sitting in his basement, just spawning up new Twitter accounts. And I do block them when they get on me, because they'll just spam me and they'll just keep coming and saying belligerent things. And then I block them and they just spawn another one. And then I block them and they spawn another one. Like these, it only takes me a second to block them. It takes them at least 5 or 10 minutes to make a new account, I think. So I think I win those races. But it does ruin the discourse. It makes it ugly. It makes it mixed. You can still have the anonymous accounts on there. But let's say, for example, okay, we get the blue checks on Twitter. They only offer that verification to people that they determine is a person of public interest, which is kind of arbitrary and not, there's people who qualify for blue checks who probably shouldn't. And there's others who really have a lot of profiling and they don't get a blue check, or they even use that blue check to punish Twitter accounts they don't like. Jonathan Kay, he annoyed them. They didn't kick him off Twitter, but they took away his verification. It shouldn't be a carrot and a stick thing, but that's what they use it for. But maybe have I think Parler sort of started along those lines in that too, with like a red check. You could verify your account. Doesn't mean you have to have your name front and center on it, but you verify it. And then there will be at least a checkbox next to it. So it shows that there's a real person behind it. And as I said, then you can't constantly spawn off new ones all the time and things like that. It's just other ways as social media evolves and moves. I mean, Twitter, like I said, I enjoy it, but there's definitely limitations, and you've got to really have a thick skin to play around on Twitter. And there's good stuff, there's bad stuff. I mean, we see stuff as it breaks. Twitter is very valuable to us. If you want to see things as they right when they come out, because whether people like it or not, most people aren't on Twitter, but I tell you what, all of the media are on Twitter. So if something's happening, something comes out right now, it's going to hit Twitter first. So it's valuable to us as news providers just to keep an eye on. And it's good for us to share and get our stuff out when we get something breaking and moving as well, as we do sometimes here at the Standard. We get a lot of unique breaking content and things like that. But social media, I mean, who knows where it's going to be in 10 years? I mean, look where it was 10 years ago compared to where it is today. Nothing's going to be static. This is not going to remain the same. These giants, and they seem like they're never going to go away. Well, let's remember, Yahoo used to be huge. What were some of the others? Some of those providers, the very first dial-up one I was with, I'm even forgetting their name. I had to pay a huge amount so I could dial into this 1-800 number. And America Online, that was it. Where'd they go? Vanished. Yet they were a massive giant at the end of the 90s, and they're gone. MySpace, massive. Facebook wiped them out. It seems like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are going to dominate these things. They'll be pushed aside by something. Somebody's going to come up with something, and we'll watch it. Hopefully it evolves for the better. But as we talk about on here, with the amount of woke and cancel culture and lunatics out there who don't like free speech, don't like unrestrained speech, it might not be that much better. We'll see as it comes along. This is Adam Fulton saying CAD vision. Yeah. And what were some of the others? CompuServe. There's another beauty. We'll see what comes next. Twitter. We'll see how long it lasts. I like it for now anyways. As I said, I mean, hey, I could put a 3-word tweet out there and actually, I don't know what the stats are, but it's probably reached like 200,000 people right now. Just for the sake of dark entertainment, it's fun for that. So we'll watch as it goes there. All right, back to one of those stories earlier. Gangland at City Hall, organized crime. I was talking a little bit about that before, and I was talking to Myke about the public sector, municipal governments. I ranted about that the other day too. People underestimate just how important municipal governments are to you. They're boring, they're dry, but they really are a lot closer to you than any other level, and people don't pay enough attention to them, and that's why they get away with this. So there's a federal report from CSIS that counted 31 gangs and other criminal departments or criminal groups with agents in city departments. These groups actually have agents in city departments. So 31 assessed organized crime groups have access via employment within the Canadian public sector. Like, these guys are actually entrenched. I mean, it says of these, 26% were mafia groups, 10% outlaw biker gangs, and 6% of street gangs. These are in our municipal governments, guys. Familial and romantic relationships, monetary benefits appear to be the principal factors in motivating corruption and infiltration. If you look at the mafia, I'm going to be what's his name again? AJ. I guess I've got coming up next week, by the way, it's AJ Galante. Where are we? I've got it somewhere. I just got an email from him. If people watched a Netflix special, it was on him and his family. They were involved in some pretty shady happenings, and he owned a whole pile of trash trucks and companies out on the East Coast in the States, the Galante family, and they went down on a whole pile of racketeering charges. But they also started this hockey team, the Dansbury Trashers or something like that, and they were just a bunch of goons. It was really bizarre. If you look it up on Netflix with those Trashers, it's really fascinating. Either way, kind of tying together with, I got him on as a guest next week to talk about an event they got coming in Alberta with this hockey fighting thing that they got going on. But why was the media so tied up in trash? Or the mafia? Oh, the media is trashy too. Because again, that's where they got into all those municipal contracts. And it's funny because the Netflix special implies that the family, the father of the fella I'm talking to, was the one that they modeled Tony Soprano after because of his trash company and how that was infiltrated. And that's why they get into unions, the mafia and organized crime and things like that. They can't get into it through provincial and federal governments. It's a lot harder. Well, I mean, there's corruption in them, but the municipal level, that's where you get those sole source contracts. That's where you get some big money, and that's where you can infiltrate. And that's what this story is coming up. The police counted 71 gangs infiltrating construction companies, which are at risk of being exploited to obtain government contracts. See, they get into the government, they get into the companies, they pull it all together. We've got organized crime under the guise of government. So yeah, you wonder why I'm anti-government? There's another one of the reasons. I don't want to get too hard on this. I'm going to have AJ on next week as a guest. I'm not knocking his family. I'm sure you guys are all on the up and up now and just dealing with sporting events and no longer any questionable things. Your father did his time, and I'm certain he's well reformed now, and we'll leave that aside when we talk later. So, but again, we've got some very problematic things going on with our governments. There's another one with executives drinking on the job. I think Dave's got that story up there as well. Man, so I think we've covered a lot today, guys. I appreciate that. So as I said, tonight I'm going to be going to the Pierre Poilievre event. I'll be live tweeting from there, and I'll report and talk about what I saw. Maybe I'll see some of you guys out there tonight. It's going to be at Spruce Meadows down in South Calgary there. And tomorrow I've got guests, Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan leader Philip Zajac, perhaps, mispronouncing a gentleman's name, but he's their new leader, and we'll talk to him about things. They made a decent splash in the last Saskatchewan general election. And then I'm going to talk to Rob Anderson of the Free Alberta Strategy. He got together with Barry Cooper and Derek Fromm, and it's, again, more of an independence-leaning sort of organization and promoting those sorts of things. Just that one more reminder, yes, subscribe to us, guys. All those social media giants I was just talking about them, well, we depend on them, and that's how we can get to you, and that's how we can get to more viewers and watchers. So make sure to subscribe if you're on YouTube, Rumble, any of these platforms, and share us. That's how we can keep going. And hit that alert button. We might or might not live stream the event tonight. If we can, we will. You see, when those things happen, if you've hit that bell on your social media thing, you will see the alert when it pops up, because we stream things sometimes when news is breaking. We get a reporter somewhere and it'll pop up out of the blue. If you subscribe and if you hit that bell, you will always see those things as they break. We are a news organization. It's not just me ranting in my opinion. We cover stuff, a lot of unique stuff when we can. So thank you all for tuning in today, guys. I will see you all tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp, and I'm sure we'll have another good show.